Deafness and Deafblindness, Society and History. Exhibition Board 2 continued. We cannot be sure as to how Annie and George met. There does appear to be a connection between the two, with Annie spending substantial portions of her childhood in Trowbridge, and possibly later with her father, and George living in Trowbridge as a tailor. It may be that their paths had crossed on several occasions. Annie was a dressmaker, George a tailor. Both were deaf. They had perhaps found a supportive community for themselves in Trowbridge. The pair married on a cold Christmas morning in 1904 by the Reverend Joseph Wayne, the pastor of the Conager Chapel in Trowbridge. The Warminster and Westbury Journal reported that a deaf and dumb couple married at Trowbridge. From the description given to us, it appears that George and Annie were well known and liked in the community. George and Annie remained living in Trowbridge, where they had their daughter Vera in 1905. They were married for 8 years. Sadly, George passed away in 1912, aged 46. Annie later remarried in 1917 to Charles Henry Hobbs, who was also listed as deaf and dumb from birth in the 1901 census, and who had mostly resided and worked with his family during his life. Perhaps Charles found independence with Annie following their marriage, showing his family that he was more capable than they believed. Charles unfortunately died in 1930, and we find his burial entry in the Eastington Parish Register on 20th of May, and that was Gloucestershire. He was aged 58. It appears that Annie married again a year later to Walter Postlethwaite in Bath in the fourth quarter of 1931. We find Annie and Walter on the 1939 National Register, living at 62 Bacon Hill Estate in Stroud, an estate probably built in the early 1930s. Annie is categorised as an unpaid domestic. Annie remained living at the Pagan Hill property until her death in 1941. She was buried at St Paul's Church, Whites Hill, just up the road to the north of the estate. Annie and George's story is one of shared community, of finding their place with others where they could perhaps feel secure, understood, welcomed, and where they could belong.